My father gave my late mother's house to his new wife. I tried to fight it in court, but without a will, I didn't stand a chance. I lost. Years passed, and eventually she decided to sell the house, hoping to cash in. But fate had other plans. The call came in the dead of night, a single, sharp ring that sliced through the silence like a knife. It was the moment I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the last fragment of my childhood home, my mother's sanctuary, was about to be obliterated by a woman who had spent years systematically erasing every trace of her. The digital glow of my phone cast long shadows across my apartment walls, illuminating dust motes dancing in the cold, still air. Outside, the city hummed a muted, distant lullaby, but inside, a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. This wasn't just about a house. It was about a legacy, a memory, and a final, crushing betrayal. Before all this chaos, before the darkness swallowed us, life with my mom, Sarah, was a warm, vibrant canvas. We lived in a cozy house, a gift from my grandparents, Martha and George, given to Sarah when she was pregnant with me, Alex. My mom, a nurse with a heart of gold, was a master at juggling hospital shifts and family life, while my dad, David, built homes with his own hands. Sundays, though, those were sacred. Our ritual. Massive stacks of pancakes, so many chocolate chips Sarah would just laugh, then endless cartoons. Dad would pretend to read his newspaper, but I could hear him chuckling louder than me at the dumb jokes. It was normal. It was ours. Sarah was the anchor. Her neat handwriting on the fridge calendar tracked every birthday, every appointment. She orchestrated the holidays, created traditions like our annual Christmas light drive with hot chocolate warming our hands. Little things that felt insignificant then, but now they echo with a heartbreaking clarity. They were the threads that wove our family together. When I was 13, the headache started. Just stress, we thought. New glasses, maybe. But then Sarah, who never forgot a single thing, started slipping. Little memory lapses, then bigger ones. A cold dread settled over us, growing heavier with each passing day. 2 weeks after Dad took her to the doctor, the world fractured. Brain cancer. Aggressive. Already spread. Everything after that was a blur of sterile hospital rooms and the harsh smell of disinfectant. I remember visiting Sarah, barely recognizing the gaunt, hairless woman in the bed. 8 months. 8 months from diagnosis to absence. I was still 13, almost 14. One day, I had a mom. The next, I just didn't. David, my rock of a father, crumbled. He tried to hold it together for me. But the muffled sobs from their bedroom at night were a constant, aching soundtrack. He started drinking. He missed bills. We survived on autopilot, 2 ghosts haunting a house that had once pulsed with life. I learned to do laundry from YouTube tutorials and existed on microwaved meals. The silence in the house was deafening, the mess a physical manifestation of our grief. Sometimes we'd just sit, staring at Sarah's empty chair, the space she once filled now a gaping void. Our home became a museum of her absence. I spent more time at friends' houses, desperate to escape the suffocating sadness. David buried himself in work, picking up every extra shift he could. We both understood the unspoken rule: don't talk about it. Just survive. About a year after Sarah died, I walked in to find David actually cleaning. He'd gotten a haircut. He looked different. He told me he'd met someone at work, Brenda. Her husband had left her years ago. They'd had coffee. A strange mix of relief and a sharp pang of betrayal pierced me. How could he? But what was he supposed to do? Be alone forever? I was 14. Everything felt like a betrayal. David started dating Brenda. At first he was discreet, seeing her when I was out. Then came the inevitable question: would it be okay if Brenda came for dinner? Sure, I mumbled, because what else could I say? That first night, Brenda brought me a video game I'd mentioned wanting. David must have told her. She seemed nice enough, laughing a little too loudly at Dad's jokes, asking about school without being pushy. She had 2 kids of her own, a son, Kevin, 17 and in college, and a daughter, Tiffany, 18, working retail.
I didn't meet them that night.
The dinner was awkward, stiff, but not terrible. Brenda tried too hard. I could feel her nervousness. But David, he looked genuinely happy, happier than I'd seen him in years. After that, Brenda was everywhere. A couple of times a week, then suddenly every night. She'd cook, she'd clean, she'd act like she owned the place. I tried to be cool about it. Dad was happy, and honestly, having actual meals instead of takeout was a welcome change. Then, 3 weeks after our first meeting, the first bomb dropped. We were at dinner. Brenda had made lasagna, nowhere near Sarah's, but I kept silent. She looked at me, a serious, expectant gaze, and said, "Alex, if you ever wanted to call me Mom, that would be okay with me." I nearly choked. David just beamed, his face alight as if she'd uttered the most beautiful words. I mumbled, "Thanks, but I'm good," and escaped to my room. That night, I pulled out old photo albums, tracing Sarah's face in the pictures until I fell asleep, the betrayal a bitter taste in my mouth. Things accelerated at a terrifying pace. Within 6 months, Brenda was practically living with us. Her kids, Kevin and Tiffany, would drop by on weekends, treating the house like a free hotel. They were in their early 20s but acted like entitled teenagers, leaving messes, expecting Brenda to clean up. They rarely spoke to me, beyond a grunt about the TV remote. A year after they started dating, David and Brenda got engaged. He took me out for burgers, telling me before he proposed. I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But all I could think was, it hadn't even been 2 years since Sarah died. When I didn't burst with joy, David got that worried look. "Your mom would want us to be happy, Alex." What could I do? So I faked a smile, said I was happy. The wedding was small, in our backyard. Brenda wanted it there. "It's becoming our home, too," she'd said. I saw Martha and George, my grandparents, trying to keep it together. They were polite to Brenda, always. But Grandma Martha pulled me aside at one point, her voice a strained whisper. "This house, Alex, it's your mother's legacy. Don't you ever forget that." I didn't understand the full weight of her words then. After the wedding, the changes started subtly. A new couch, different curtains, little things. Then one day I walked in, and it hit me like a physical blow. Sarah's reading chair, gone. Donated. The family photos, rearranged. David and Brenda's wedding portraits front and center, while pictures of Sarah were relegated to the hallway, almost out of sight. Even my growth chart, the one Sarah had meticulously marked each year, painted over. Erased. Brenda wasn't just redecorating, she was erasing Sarah. And David let it happen. I finally snapped when I saw Sarah's gardening tools, her beloved trowels and gloves, boxed up for Goodwill. "Why are you getting rid of her things?" I demanded of Brenda. She gave me that saccharine, sympathetic look. "Sweetie, it's been almost 2 years. We need to move forward as a family." David backed her up. "It's time to heal, son." I wanted to scream. Getting rid of Sarah's things wasn't healing, it was an act of erasure. But I just grabbed the box, clutching it like a shield, and took it to my room. Kevin and Tiffany treated our house like their personal playground. Kevin would crash on the couch after parties. Tiffany used our laundry like a free laundromat. They left messes, I got lectures. When I was 16, Kevin broke up with his girlfriend and suddenly needed a place to stay. Guess whose room he got? Mine. I was shunted into the smaller guest room. Kevin, this 22-year-old man who barely grunted in my direction, took over my childhood bedroom. Brenda painted it without even asking me. Painted over the wall where Sarah had measured my height year after year. Covered it with an ugly gray. When I got upset, David told me I was being selfish. I needed to be more welcoming to my new brother. Brenda was always sweet as pie when David was around, bringing me snacks while I studied, asking about my day. All that TV movie stepmom crap. But when David was gone, she was a different person entirely. Passive-aggressive comments about how messy I was compared to her perfect children. How I didn't appreciate all she did. She'd go through my stuff, rearrange things in my room, just cleaning. David either didn't notice or didn't care. He was so completely wrapped up in his new, perfect family, He was blind to the insidious chipping away of my mother's memory of me. Every time I tried to bring it up, he'd get that disappointed look. "You're not giving us a chance, Alex." Eventually, I stopped trying. I focused on school, got a part-time job, and counted down the days until I could escape. When I was 17, I overheard Brenda and David talking about making it official. I initially thought they meant adopting Kevin and Tiffany, a thought that made my stomach churn. But then Brenda's voice, sharp and clear, cut through. "I just don't feel like this is really our house when it still has her name on the deed." That's when it clicked. She wanted David to put her name on Sarah's house. The house my grandparents had given to Sarah, not to David. I didn't say anything. I was too close to graduation, too close to getting out. What did I know about deeds and ownership? I was just a kid. By the time I graduated, the house barely resembled the home I grew up in. I moved out the second I could, into a cheap apartment with a roommate about 30 minutes away. Close enough to see David, far enough to escape Brenda and her kids. David seemed sad I was leaving so young, but honestly, it wasn't home anymore. It was just a house where strangers lived, one of whom happened to be my dad. For 2 years, I kept my head down. Community college, a decent-paying warehouse job. I'd visit Dad every couple of weeks, timing it for when Brenda was at yoga or whatever. We'd watch sports, grab a burger. Normal father-son stuff. We had this unspoken agreement. Don't talk about Brenda. Don't talk about the house. Looking back, that was a massive mistake. But hindsight's always 20/20ths. When I did see Brenda, she'd put on her perfect stepmom act. Hugs. "We miss you around here." Questions about my classes. It was such obvious theater. One time, she even baked cookies for my visit. She'd never baked a single cookie when I lived there. David ate it up, though, always looking at me hopefully. "See, Alex? She's trying." I'd just smile, nod, and count the minutes until I could leave without seeming rude. Kevin and Tiffany were still constants. Kevin, now in his mid-20s, had started a business, which, as far as I could tell, meant selling weed and living in my old bedroom. Tiffany had cycled through 3 jobs in 2 years, but always had money for new clothes. Neither had their lives together, yet Brenda spoke of them as if they were successful entrepreneurs, while I, working hard, studying, living independently, was somehow less impressive. Then there was the really messed up part. My grandparents, Martha and George, stopped coming over. They used to visit monthly when Sarah was alive, and even after she died, they'd check on us. But after Brenda moved in, their visits became strained, awkward, until they just stopped. When I asked Grandma Martha, her voice was thick with pain. "It's too hard, Alex, to see everything changed." So I started meeting them for lunch instead, away from the house, away from the constant reminder of what we'd lost. Brenda also began trying to hijack our family holidays. Sarah had gone all out for Thanksgiving and Christmas, special decorations, traditional recipes, the whole 9 yards. Brenda discarded all of it, inventing her own traditions, her own food, even moving celebrations to accommodate Kevin and Tiffany's schedules. The house, once bursting with Sarah's love during holidays, became unrecognizable. I visited less and less. It was too painful. David noticed my distance and started meeting me for lunch, coming to my apartment. It was good, I guess. But every conversation somehow circled back to how wonderful Brenda was, or some trivial accomplishment of her kids. Kevin's thinking about real estate, aka still selling weed from his bedroom. Tiffany might go back to school. She didn't. A year ago, Grandma Martha got sick. Not terminal, but bad pneumonia. 2 weeks in the hospital. I visited her, and she took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Alex," she said, her voice raspy, "your mother wanted you to have that house someday. It was her home, and she wanted it to be your home, too." My throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to me about the house's future. I'd always assumed it would go to David, and then, I hadn't thought that far. After Grandma recovered, I tried to casually bring it up with Dad over lunch. I mentioned Grandma's words, Sarah's wishes. David's face changed. His ears got red. His speech sped up. He immediately changed the subject. "David's a terrible liar."
I knew then.
Something was wrong. I let it drop, but I started paying closer attention. I noticed mail from a lawyer's office, mail David tried to hide when I walked in. I overheard Brenda on the phone talking about making sure everything's in order and protecting our assets. My gut screamed. Then last month, my cousin, Chloe, let something slip at a family gathering. Brenda had been asking Aunt Carol about inheritance laws, about Sarah's will, or lack thereof. Alarm bells screamed. Why would Brenda care about Sarah's will unless she was trying to secure her claim to the house? I did some digging. Sarah had been 39 when she died. No will. We didn't have immense wealth, just the house. Everything had legally gone to David. It made sense legally, but it didn't feel right. The house came from Sarah's family. It was her house. I spoke to other relatives. I wasn't alone. Sarah's entire side of the family had watched Brenda systematically erase Sarah, quietly replacing her. They were all upset but felt powerless, unwilling to create a rift with David. Aunt Carol finally told me, "We've been waiting for you to stand up, Alex. We didn't want to cause problems between you and your dad." So, that's where things stood. I was stewing, trying to find the right words to approach David. This wasn't about money. It was about preserving Sarah's legacy, respecting where the house came from. But before I could articulate it, David dropped his bomb. Last month, he called asking me to dinner. Future planning, he said. I figured boring financial talk. I almost said no. I had plans with my roommate, Mike. But David sounded serious. So I agreed. When I got there, Brenda, Kevin, and Tiffany were all there. Red flag number 1. This wasn't a casual dinner. The good china was out. Brenda had cooked an elaborate, multi-course meal. Everyone was too nice. Even Kevin, who usually barely grunted. The vibe was off. My stomach churned. Dinner conversation was excruciating.
For small talk.
I kept waiting for David to bring up the future planning. He waited until dessert. Classic David move. Get everyone full, relaxed, then drop the bad news. After Brenda, who couldn't bake for anything, served a fancy cheesecake she'd clearly bought from a bakery, David cleared his throat. He got that serious look. "Son," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about the future lately. About what happens to everything when I'm gone." Great start to a fun conversation, right? Brenda reached over, squeezing his hand, all supportive. Kevin and Tiffany suddenly became engrossed in their phones. I just nodded, bracing myself. "I've been meeting with a financial advisor and a lawyer," David continued, "getting everything in order, making sure everyone's taken care of." He paused, expecting praise. "That's good," I said. "What else do you say?" Then he dropped it, the bomb that would shatter everything. "We've decided that when I pass, the house will go to Brenda. The rest of my assets, retirement accounts, investments, insurance payouts, will be split equally between you, Kevin, and Tiffany." I must have looked like he'd physically struck me. He quickly added, "It's the fairest way to handle things. Brenda needs somewhere to live, and this way, everyone gets an equal share." I sat there, the words swirling, trying to make sense of the utter absurdity. Sarah's house, the house I grew up in, the house she loved, going to Brenda. And I was getting an equal share with Kevin and Tiffany, two strangers who had no connection to our family, no connection to Sarah. "This was my mom's house," I said, my voice sharp, unfamiliar even to me. "Her parents gave it to her, not to you." Brenda jumped in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Sweetie, I know this is emotional for you, but legally, don't call me sweetie," I snapped. The rage was building, hot and suffocating. "And don't pretend this is about fairness. Your kids have their own family, their own father. This house has nothing to do with you." David's face fell, that disappointed look. "Alex, I understand you're upset, but Brenda is my wife now. I need to make sure she's taken care of if something happens to me. She could be taken care of without getting Mom's house." I argued, my voice rising. "You have life insurance, retirement accounts. Why does she need this specific house? The house that came from my mom's family?" Tiffany, to my surprise, spoke up. "It's about fairness, Alex. We're a family." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "No, we're not. You already have two parents, 2 inheritances. You never lived here. You have no claim to this house. Kevin muttered, selfish prick, under his breath. I ignored him. He wasn't worth it. David tried to calm things down, talking about providing for me in other ways. Maybe his old 2010 Honda, a car that was practically falling apart, and some cash. I don't want your car, I said, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. I don't want your money. I want my mom's house to stay in her family, like she would have wanted. Like her parents wanted when they gave it to her. Brenda's eyes welled up, her best victim impression. I've tried so hard to make this a home for all of us, Alex. I've tried to be a mother to you. You're not my mother, I roared, the words tearing from my throat. And this isn't your home. You've spent years erasing every trace of my mom from this house. You've thrown away her things, changed everything she loved, cut down her garden, even painted over my growth chart, and now you want to take her house, too? David was on his feet now, his face red with anger. That's enough, Alex. Brenda has been nothing but good to you. She's my wife, and this is our home now. I've made my decision, and that's final. Something inside me broke. I stood up, my hands trembling. If you're giving Mom's house to them, I said, my voice eerily calm, then I don't want anything from you. Not a penny. You can leave everything to your new family. David looked utterly shocked, as if he couldn't believe I wasn't just rolling over and accepting his decree. You don't mean that, Alex. You're just upset. I do mean it, I countered, my voice laced with steel. Mom would be heartbroken to see her house go to people who never knew her, who've erased every trace of her. Her parents would be devastated. Brenda tried her peacemaker routine again. No one's trying to erase your mother, sweetie. We're just moving forward as a family. Stop calling me sweetie, I nearly shouted, losing control. And stop pretending you care about my mom's memory. If you did, you wouldn't be so eager to take her house away from her only child. Kevin shot up then, all big man energy. Don't talk to my mom like that in her own house. It's not her house, I yelled back. That's the whole damn point. David slammed his hand on the table. That's enough. This is still my house, and I won't have shouting at the dinner table. I grabbed my keys, heading for the door. David followed, asking where I was going. Home, I said, the word a bitter taste. My actual home, not this place that used to be home, but isn't anymore. You're being childish, he said, his voice pleading now. We need to discuss this like adults. There's nothing to discuss, I retorted, facing him. You've made your decision. You've chosen them over Mom's memory, over me, over what's right. I can't stop you, but I don't have to pretend I'm okay with it. As I got in my car, Brenda came out, calling after me. Alex, think about what you're doing. Your father loves you. Don't throw away your relationship over property. I almost laughed at the searing irony. She was telling me not to throw away relationships over property, when that's exactly what my father was doing. I drove off, feeling like I was going to either puke or cry or both. My phone immediately blew up. Texts from David, saying I'd hurt him. From Brenda, saying I needed to apologize. Even from Kevin and Tiffany, calling me selfish. I turned my phone off, driving aimlessly, trying to process the seismic shift that had just occurred. When I finally got back to my apartment, Mike, my roommate, took one look at my face. Dude, that's messed up, he said, after I'd poured out the whole story. The house should definitely go to you. I stayed up all night, wrestling with it. A part of me felt a suffocating guilt for walking out on David. Another part was so angry I could barely see straight. But the biggest part was just profound sadness. My mother's house, the last tangible link to her, was going to be consumed by people who had spent years erasing her. The next morning, David called. I think you owe Brenda an apology, were his first words. No, I'm sorry. Or let's figure this out. Just straight to apologizing to her. Are you serious right now? I asked, incredulous. After what you told me yesterday, you think I'm the one who needs to apologize? You were disrespectful to my wife in our home, he insisted. It's not her home, I yelled. That's the whole damn problem here. We went back and forth, talking in circles. He kept insisting he needed to protect Brenda's future, that I was being selfish and immature. I kept trying to explain there were other ways to provide for her without giving her Sarah's house. She can still live there, Dad. I'm not going to throw her in the street, but it shouldn't be in her name. If Mom were here, would she want this? He hesitated, just for a second. She'd want me taken care of. I exhaled slowly. That was it. He wasn't protecting himself. He was just giving Brenda what she wanted, using Sarah as an excuse. We both know that's not true, I said quietly, the fight draining from me. Mom would want her house to stay in her family. She'd want it to go to me eventually. I'm trying to be fair to everyone, he insisted. No, I said. You're trying to make Brenda happy at my expense. And you know what? If that's your choice, fine. But don't expect me to pretend I'm okay with it. I hung up. A few minutes later, Brenda texted a long paragraph about wanting us all to be a family, how she'd always tried to be there for me. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't even bother responding. That was a month ago. David called a few more times, trying to get me to come over, to clear the air. Brenda kept sending guilt-tripping texts about how sad David was, how life is too short for family conflicts. I hadn't gone. I couldn't bring myself to sit across from them, knowing their plans for Sarah's house. I'd spoken to Martha, George, and Aunt Carol. They were furious, offering to help me fight it legally, though no one was sure we'd have a case, since the house had gone to David when Sarah died. The whole thing made me sick. What would Sarah do? She was always the strong one, the one who stood up for what was right. She'd fight for that house. Not for its value, but for what it represented. And that's exactly what I planned to do. After a week of ignored calls and dodged texts, I agreed to meet David. I needed to lay everything out, clearly, without Brenda or her kids ganging up on me. We met at a diner, neutral territory. I figured he wouldn't make a scene in public. David looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. For a second, I felt a flicker of sympathy, thinking this drama was affecting him. But then I remembered how casually he'd offered up Sarah's house. My sympathy evaporated. We ordered coffee and sat in silence. He expected me to apologize first, a standard David power move. But I wasn't backing down. This was too important. I started by telling him this wasn't about money or inheritance. It was about Sarah's memory being systematically erased from the house she loved. And now, the final indignity, giving it to someone who never knew her. I reminded him how the house came from Martha and George. I listed the ways Brenda had changed it. With each example, David shifted, avoided my gaze. He knew it was true. Then I laid out a compromise. Brenda could live in the house as long as she wanted after he passed. I wasn't a monster. But legally, the house should be in my name. It should stay in Sarah's family. David stirred his coffee, for what felt like an eternity. When he finally looked up, his expression told me nothing I said had made a difference. He gave me the same BS. Brenda was his wife. He needed to protect her future. He tried to guilt me. Sarah would understand. Sarah would want me to be happy. Sarah would approve. That's when I truly lost it. Not yelling, but with a cold, terrifying calm. You have no right to speak for Mom anymore, Dad, I said, my voice low and steady. Not when you've spent years letting another woman erase every trace of her from her own home. The mom I knew would be heartbroken to see her house going to strangers instead of her only child. He tried the "we're family" card, claiming Brenda and her kids were my family too. I shut that down hard. Brenda's kids were adults with their own father when she married you. They never lived in that house as children. Never formed any real bonds with me. They never treated me like family, except when it benefited them. How does it make sense that they will inherit from 4 parents, their mom, their dad, you, and effectively my mom, while I'm supposed to be grateful for a used car? When I saw I wasn't getting through, I pulled my last resort. I've talked to a lawyer about our options, I said, an exaggeration, but he didn't know that. Since the house originally came from Mom's family, and there might be questions about how assets were divided after her death, there could be grounds for a legal challenge. I didn't want to threaten him, but I needed him to understand I was serious. This wasn't something I'd just get over. I was prepared to fight, even against him. David's face went on a journey. Shock, hurt, anger, finally settling on that cold disappointment parents specialize in. I can't believe you'd consider suing your own father over property, he said. If money and things are more important to you than family, then maybe I've misjudged your character. That stung. But I pushed back. Is a house more important to you than your relationship with your only child, Dad? I'm not asking for money. I explicitly said you could leave all your other assets to Brenda and her kids. All I want is for my mom's house to stay in her family, where it belongs. We went back and forth for almost 2 hours, orbiting the same points, neither willing to budge. Eventually, David pushed his coffee cup away. I need to think about everything. He tried to end on a hopeful note. We'll figure something out that works for everyone. But the look in his eyes told me he had no intention of changing his plans. As we paid, he asked if I'd come for dinner that weekend. Brenda's making your favorite. She had no idea what my favorite food was. I told him I needed space. He seemed more upset about me declining dinner than the fight itself. When I got home, I had 3 missed calls from Brenda. Of course, David had immediately called her. I didn't call back. She texted a long paragraph about wanting everyone to be happy, how she thinks of me as her own son, and how hurt David was. Classic manipulation. The next day, I called Martha and George. Grandma Martha cried. She told me stories of how they'd saved for years, how proud they were to give that house to Sarah, how they always pictured it staying in the family for generations. Hearing her pain solidified my resolve. Over the next few days, David called. I answered once, but when it was clear he just wanted to convince me to drop everything, I cut the call short. What truly sealed it was when Jessica, my roommate Mike's girlfriend who works at a law firm, helped me look up property records online. David had quietly added Brenda to the deed of the house 3 years ago, while I was still living there. He'd never mentioned it, never discussed it. He had just signed over half of Sarah's house to his new wife, behind my back. That felt like a knife twisting in my gut. That's when I made my decision. No more keeping the peace for David's sake. I was going to fight for Sarah's house, not just for me, but for her memory, for everything that house represented. If David wanted a legal battle, that's exactly what he was going to get. I met with a lawyer, gathered every document, every old photo, every sympathy card that mentioned the house. Sarah's family backed me. David found out about the legal consultation, probably through a family friend, and completely lost it. He called me, screaming, saying I was betraying him, that he couldn't believe his own son would sue him, that Sarah would be ashamed of me. I stayed calm. You left me no choice, Dad. You betrayed Mom's memory and ignored what I know she would have wanted. If you aren't willing to do the right thing, then I have to fight for it. I heard from Chloe that David and Brenda were telling everyone I was money-hungry, jealous of her kids, that I had emotional problems from Sarah's death. They were trying to control the narrative, painting me as the villain. Some relatives bought it. Others saw through it. By then, it wasn't just about the house. It was about standing up for what was right, honoring Sarah's memory, not letting Brenda and her kids swoop in and take what wasn't theirs. It was about David choosing his new wife over his own son and his dead wife's wishes. My lawyer warned me it would be tough. No will meant everything went to David. But since the house came from Sarah's family, we might have a shot. The legal battle was brutal and quick, like ripping off a Band-Aid, except the Band-Aid was my relationship with David, and it took all the skin with it. My case fell apart in court. The judge ruled that since Sarah didn't have a will, everything legally went to David. The origin of the house didn't matter. And David had already added Brenda to the deed years ago, so she co-owned it. My lawyer argued about Martha and George's intentions, but without written documentation, it was just hearsay. We lost. There's no other way to put it. The court stated David could leave the house to whoever he wanted. I was devastated, but not surprised. The legal system isn't designed to protect what's morally right. It protects what's technically legal. Losing the case sucked, but seeing David sit next to Brenda, not even looking at me, was worse. When the judge ruled in their favor, Brenda smirked. David just walked out. That was the last time I saw him alive. I went completely no contact. Blocked his number, Brenda's, her kids. Even some family members who sided with them. I deleted social media for a while. I couldn't bear to see posts about their happy family or read comments about what a terrible son I was for suing my own father. Martha and George were heartbroken about the house, but they supported my decision to cut contact. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, Grandpa George said. He was right. Some betrayals cut too deep. For about a year, I focused on rebuilding my life. I finished my degree, got a better job, moved to a nicer apartment. I started dating Emily, who's amazing. Life was moving forward. The wound wasn't healed, but it had scabbed over. Then the call. David had a massive heart attack at work. Dead before the ambulance arrived. 54 years old. Despite everything, it hit me like a freight train. I sat on my kitchen floor and sobbed for hours. All the anger, all the resentment, got buried under a tidal wave of grief.
He was still my dad.
We had 16 good years before Sarah died, before everything went to hell. Those memories still meant something. The funeral was awkward. Brenda played the devastated widow perfectly, dabbing at dry eyes with tissues. Kevin and Tiffany stood looking solemn, but I caught Kevin checking his phone during the eulogy. I stayed in the back, didn't speak, didn't join the receiving line. Some of David's friends came to offer condolences, but most people gave me a wide berth, as if my grief was contagious. Brenda didn't speak to me at all, which was fine. I wasn't there for her. I was there to say goodbye to my dad. About 3 months after the funeral, I drove past the house. A for sale sign stood starkly in the yard. Brenda hadn't even waited a decent interval before cashing out. Sarah's home. My childhood home. Just another asset to liquidate. I didn't try to fight it. What was the point? David was gone. The legal battle was lost. And I was finally starting to heal. Better to just let it go. Over the next few months, I heard through the grapevine what happened. Brenda listed the house way too high, convinced she'd cash out big. But the market dipped. By the time she lowered the price, she walked away with significantly less than she expected. Karma, it turns out, isn't just a concept. It's a financial reality check. Kevin blew through his share in record time. First on a crypto scam, then on a business venture that was just selling weed more openly. 2 arrests later. He's couch surfing and on probation. Tiffany bought a luxury car she couldn't afford, totaled it while texting, then tried to sue the other driver, who happened to be the son of a town's top lawyer. She lost everything. As for Brenda, she took her cut, ran off to Florida with some online boyfriend, and then got smacked with a massive IRS bill for tax fraud. Turns out Aunt Carol, who works in county records, helped uncover that little lie. Brenda's back in town now, working a minimum wage job, whining about how unfair life is. Even her kids cut her off once the money dried up. Oh, and the new owners of the house? They tore it down, built something completely different. In a weird way, that's almost better. I don't have to drive by and see strangers living in Sarah's house. It's just gone, like that chapter of my life. Martha and George, my grandparents, are still hanging in there. When I told Grandma Martha about Brenda's spectacular fall from grace, she just nodded. Your mother always believed what goes around comes around, Alex. I think Sarah would be satisfied. I'm doing pretty well now. Emily and I got engaged last month. We're saving for our own house. Nothing fancy, just something that's ours. Something I'll make damn sure stays in our family, with a proper will and everything.
I still miss Sarah.
I still have complicated feelings about David. Sometimes I dream about the house, not as it was when Brenda had taken over, but as it was when Mom was alive. Sunday pancakes, movie nights, Mom's garden in full bloom. The house is gone. That can't be changed. But in the end, Brenda and her kids got exactly what they deserved for how they treated Mom's memory. They took something precious and meaningful and treated it like an ATM. Now they have nothing. No house, no money, no relationship with each other. Turns out Sarah was right about one more thing. She always told me that material things don't last. But karma? Karma never forgets. Sometimes you don't need revenge. Life handles it. What about you? If you were in my shoes, faced with such a profound betrayal, would you have fought for your family's legacy, even if it meant suing your own father? Or would you have simply walked away? Let me know in the comments below.